Welcome to our second Germination Strategy Session webinar of the year. Today we're looking at how retailers can be good stewards of seed treatments. My name is Mark Zinkowitz and I'm the editor of Germination, and today I'm serving as your moderator. First, I'd like to thank our sponsors, 2020 Seed Labs, SeedCan, and Cantera Seeds for their support. I'd also like to note a few housekeeping items. The webinar is being recorded and it'll be made available on germination.ca by the end of the week. Today we have three speakers talking about the topic of good seed treatment stewardship for retailers: Russel Hurst, Peter Entz, and Sara Foster. For audio quality purposes, all microphones have been muted with the exception of our speakers. After each speaker finishes their presentation, there will be an opportunity for questions. If you have a question or comment, please share them in the chat box on the bottom left side of your screen. We certainly welcome your input. Today we have Russel Hurst speaking about the basics of good stewardship. Russel is Vice President, Sustainability and Stewardship for CropLife Canada. He's also the Executive Director of the Agrochemical Warehousing Standards Association, or ASA for short. He graduated in 2005 from the University of Guelph with an MBA in Agriculture Business. He also serves as Director for Clean Farms, with responsibilities for the industry's waste management operations, and in the past he was an agronomist for CHS Hamilton. I will turn things over to Russel. We'll get started now. Take it away, Russel.
All right, thanks, Mark. I appreciate the opportunity to provide some of my insights with everybody today. So very briefly, as a bit of background for those of you on the webinar today that aren't familiar with CropLife Canada. CropLife Canada is the industry trade association that represents Canadian developers, manufacturers, and distributors of pest control products and products of modern plant breeding, primarily biotechnology. So as part of my discussion today, I look at seed treatment in the role of stewardship as a two-pronged approach from an ag retailer perspective. And that's going to be depending on the particular operation, whether they're actively treating seed at their operation and selling seed as part of a service offering, and in some cases it's going to be both. So a couple things that I would probably make note of is as we go through this dialogue, depending on the ag retailer, some of it's going to be application-based, some of it's going to be knowledge transfer-based, but ultimately at the end of the day, it's going to be focused on ensuring that the seed treatment technologies in the marketplace are used appropriately and to seek the greatest value from that technology in the field. So as I walk through this, we'll start with the application and operations standpoint. Now, I would make note that from an ag retailer operation perspective, Peter will provide some more specific details in terms of how Richardson does things in their operation. So I'll try to keep it at a fairly high level here. So from a seed treatment stewardship standpoint, we look at the application and the operation. So those are going to be primarily facilities that are treating seed as part of their service offering. And some of the components we would want to look at there are how they're handling the product, the virgin seed prior to the storage process, prior to the treatment process, the operational commitment to ensuring a safe work environment from an environmental protection standpoint as well as a worker safety standpoint. And then the third piece, and this is really important from an application process, is to ensure that there's precise application, so that the value that's encompassed in that seed treatment product is included on the seed properly, that treated seed's handled properly, and it performs in the field at the end of the day. So that's the application component. The knowledge transfer component, and this is going to be for an ag retailer that treats and services from a seed treatment standpoint, as well as ag retailers that may not apply seed treatment at their operation, but also ultimately sell seed to growers. And part of that component will be the transfer of appropriate stewardship-based knowledge to those growers so that it's implemented in the field. So to keep with the format of the do's and don'ts, if you will, of seed treatment stewardship, to keep it aligned with the article on germination, I tried to break the discussion into three components. So the first being a do. So as an ag retailer, you want to be up to speed with the whole host of operational standards and best management practices associated with seed treatment products. Within those, there's a couple components, and the first one being the Accredited Seed Treatment Operation Standards. That's a national initiative focused primarily on the commercial aspect of the industry, and really what those standards look to have are a baseline national environmental health and safety criteria for all operations that are treating seed commercially in Canada. The second component being ensure that the facility has a commitment to precise application, and that's incredibly key to product performance in the field. So what that takes into account would be the proper calibration, the proper recipes, dust management of seed post-treatment and pre-treatment, ensuring that there's adequate and precise calibration logs, production logs, and seed treatment monitoring, training and education of staff, and then ultimately, if there is any waste generated as part of that treatment process, that's appropriately managed. And then the third component of being up to speed with good management practices is it's the safe handling of product and seed pre-application and post-application. And a couple components that deal with that would be a safe transportation and worker safety, ensuring that you have appropriate personal protective equipment based on the products that are being used in the operation. The next do as part of the role of ag retailers would be do transfer knowledge of seed treatment product stewardship to the end users. And as noted previously, a key component of this is ensuring that your grower customers have the precise knowledge and are equipped with that knowledge to make it implementable in the field. So a couple things that go into this would be seed treatments should be based on agronomic recommendations, based on the pest factors in the field, and applying the appropriate technology to address those. We want to ensure that appropriate label criteria, including precautions, directions for safe use, application procedures, PPE use, and ultimately disposal if that is applicable, are understood by the grower, whether they're applying seed treatment to themselves in an on-farm treatment scenario or are purchasing pre-treated seed as part of the sales offering. And the last piece in terms of the do is ensure that they're up to speed with in-field best management practices, and those are going to vary depending on the region of the country, the type of seed, the time of year, the field conditions, and a whole host of other components. There's a lot of really good information out there that's provided both from Health Canada as well as a number of CropLife Canada members in terms of best management practices that are field specific that growers should be aware of. So I'd encourage anybody that's interested in more of that type of information to either contact CropLife or seek it out online. And the one don't I wanted to share with everybody before I wrap up this discussion is don't believe in the myths. And you know, the myth being seed treatment technology is a one-size-fits-all model. It's the same type of seed treatment that your grandfather used 20 or 30 years ago. And the reality of the situation is that seed treatments today are targeted products. They focus on a whole host of pests, including diseases, insects, et cetera, It's an incredibly rapidly moving part of the crop protection industry. There's constantly new innovations coming into the marketplace. The ability to have incredibly precise application as part of the seed treatment technology is fantastic. We're going from days where we would apply a foliar insecticide across the entire field to a very specific targeted pest that's a seed applied technology. It's really essential that there's a very clear understanding of the pest pressures in the field and that there's an appropriate technology to address those pest pressures. And then lastly, and Peter will probably note some of these from a best management that the dealers will convey to the farmers, but it's by following these good management guidelines, seed treatment technologies are able to provide the maximum value to the growers. And I think that's really important. And in addition to that maximum value, you're going to have precise product efficacy and ensure that they're environmentally safe in the environment. And before I wrap up, a couple goals. And I think this is something I wanted to share. And really at an ag retailer level, these are going to be goals that they can convey as part of the industry, but as well as providing service and our conduit of seed treatment stewardship moving forward. And really those goals are a vibrant seed treatment industry in Canada. And that's really important, that there are a whole host of regulations, requirements, and responsibilities that are encompassed within seed treatment product use. And we need to, as an industry, ensure that they're understood and applied at the end user level. Ag retailers, I don't think this was any new news to anybody on the call, but ag retailers are acknowledged as an incredibly vital role that they play in terms of ensuring that transfer of knowledge to the end user, and embrace that from an ag retail standpoint. Embrace it and make sure that the end users do have a very thorough understanding of the benefits of seed treatment, but as well the best management practices that they need to have to ensure an environmental health and safety and maximum value for end users. So, Mark, that is everything I had to share with the audience today, and we'd certainly welcome any questions if there are any.
Thanks so much, Russell. That was great. If you have questions for Russell, please type them into the chat box on the bottom left side of your screen, and we'll take a couple questions from the audience now. Russell, just to recap, why should retailers take a two-pronged approach to good stewardship?
Thanks, Mark. So I think the two-pronged approach to good stewardship really focuses on the service offering that the ag retailer has, and in some cases that service offering is going to be an application process that they do on their facility, as well as the seed selling or the seed advice component. So based on the ag retailer, they're either going to be in both of those camps, the application and the knowledge transfer, or solely the knowledge transfer. And it's really important for an ag retailer to if they are in both of those camps, to put equal amount of time and resources into their commitment to seed treatment stewardship.
Why is it important for retailers to remind customers that today's seed treatment products are highly advanced? Yeah,
I think it goes back to some of the myths that I flagged, Mark. It's these aren't your grandfather's seed treatments. These seed treatments are highly targeted products. They are very specific in some cases on particular pests or pest thresholds, or specific fungal, et cetera, et cetera. And I think the reality of that whole situation around the highly advanced is have that dialogue, have that discussion about understanding what your field conditions are in the prior year, anticipated field conditions, what the quality of the seed lot is, and addressing that. Take as much information as you can for the upcoming planting season, and then resource that accordingly. And one of those key resources is going to be selecting the appropriate seed technology to ensure a good growing season, to ensure yields are met or expected yields are met, and that the growers receive the maximum value and benefit from the seed treatments that they're applying based on field conditions, pest pressures, and the prior that I've noted.
Great. Well, thanks so much, Russell. I'd like to switch over to Peter Entz now. Peter is Assistant Vice President, Seed and Trade for Richardson International, and he's going to be talking about good stewardship of seed treatments from a retail perspective. Peter's a former president of the Canadian Seed Trade Association. He manages the seed and trait business for Richardson International, positioning seed products for Richardson that are ultimately grown by its farm customers. Over to you, Peter.
Great, thanks, and thanks for the invite, Mark. And What I want to touch on is more our perspective, but I think it's a perspective that's shared by a lot of people who are in the seed selling or seed retailing business. So I'll just start. Mark, oh, there we go. I'm just trying to advance my slide here. First of all, we're seeing an overall interest in seed treating, and for those of us in the eastern part of the prairies, we see a lot of this driven by the growth of soybeans, certainly. But if you look at the independent data, and I know when we look at our data, there is more interest in seed treating in a host of crops. Traditional crops like malt, barley have always been reasonably high levels of seed treatment, but we're also seeing that increase in other crops like wheat. But you know, last year's increase in pulse acres and the continued growth of soybeans is really moving a lot of seed treatment. What I want to talk about a little bit is education and certification, calibration, and just adhering to label recommendation, safe handling and storage, site sanitation, and truck sanitation. So with that, one of the things I think that goes along the same lines, that this is not your father or grandfather's seed treatment operation, really rings true for us anyways. And so the equipment you're using is much more sophisticated, which is actually a good thing. And it's a good thing in a couple of reasons, for a couple of reasons. One, you're getting better, accurate, or more accurate metering of the product onto your, or a more accurate load onto your seed, for one. And you're doing it in a very much more environmentally conscious way. And, you know, one of the things I think that's a wake-up call for all of us is when you look at the public scrutiny neonicotinoid seed treatments were under in Ontario and Quebec specifically, but I mean that sort of scrutiny can hit us anywhere at any time. But I think we have to really promote the fact that we are doing a better job, we are doing a more accurate job, and just the way we couple things together, we're certainly doing a safer job to the environment, but also from a human health perspective. You know, the first bullet here is a little bit of a lame bullet because I actually couldn't find good examples of it, but I know there are some provincial regulations that you do need to adhere to, and certainly being an accredited operator is table stakes right now. And I think, you know, there's value in this for two reasons. One is just you learn more about the products and the processes that you're dealing with, and it should also give the general public a sense that we're an industry that is well trained and understands what they're doing as well. The other thing, I mean, this is more maybe individual, more individually focused to your retail or your company's retail, but you know, incorporating seed treatment into your general safety for your site. So whether that's in standard operating procedures, your training records, your inventory management, your emergency response plan, having MSDS sheets available, and having emergency contacts available. So this is just the way you can make sure what you're doing is in compliance, but also in the event of an emergency, you'll be covered and be provided, sort of a plan as to how to deal with these things. If you're looking for some guidance on how to put that together, the CSA has a guide to treated seed stewardship. It's excellent, and it's available navigating through their website. I think the other piece of education that is important is just understanding the efficacy of the products that we're treating, or that's being treated onto the seed. And again, it goes back to, this isn't your father or grandfather's seed treatment. These products are extremely efficacious. They're used at extremely low rates, and they're extremely effective. And I think one of the reasons we're seeing this uptick in seed treatment by farmers is, one, they're better, for sure. Two, there's a little bit more awareness, obviously, by companies who manufacture these products and promote these products. And certainly we'll hear from Sara, the value that seed analysts bring to the discussion in terms of being more specific in knowing what's on your seed. But anyways, as an operator, it's important for you to learn about the benefits of the seed treatment. And it's also very important to transfer that information to your farm customers so they know exactly what they're getting and what kind of benefits they should see. I think it's your job, if you have an agronomy function along with your seed retail business, is determine what the grower's needs are and operate the specific treater to optimize seed coverage. And I think we can't underestimate the excellent job that these new systems are doing in terms of getting better coverage of the seed, and that not only are the products more efficacious, but the way they're being applied and the way they cover the seed has a lot of benefits as well. Proper calibration, again, and adhering to all manufacturer label recommendation. Obviously, the product flow needs to be calibrated to achieve the proper rate. Again, ensuring that growers are going to get the highest level of efficacy. But the other thing we know is different products flow differently. We have temperature considerations like we're experiencing today. So we just need to make sure we continue to deliver the product onto the seed load at the labeled recommendation. One of the things that I have mentioned is this whole area of seed treatment, I think, is under a bit of scrutiny, and it's our job to do things right. And when you think of some of the issues with the neonicotinoid seed treatments, one of the solutions is using a fluency agent. So there are things we can do as seed treaters or agronomists that can help the situation out. But certainly, just staying in label use parameters is good, and of course, using common sense. I guess one of the things about new technology, it makes all this so much easier. So I don't think, if you're implementing if you're using state-of-the-art seed treating equipment, it's much easier to adhere to some of these requirements. Storage and safe handling. Products should be stored in an OWASA-approved shed overnight or not being used, and I think that's obviously common sense, and more so than common sense, it is an emerging requirement as well. Site sanitation. I think this is really important. It's again how you want to be perceived in the industry, but the thing with all seed treatments is they do have dyes in them, and they're water soluble, and so when you do have a spill and whatnot, it can make a rather clean site look a little unsightly. And I think farmers, understand that, and I think we understand that who are working in this area. But the general public might not understand it. So keeping a clean site and using just keeping the staining away or cleaning up the stains and whatnot, I think is a good thing just for site sanitation, but also public perception. I guess something that has come to our attention and is actually a very serious issue is getting contaminated seed into the grain handling system. So, as we know, the trucks that you put your seed-treated wheat in can also be the trucks that you deliver grain into the grain handling system. So obviously there's no tolerance for that, and growers have to be extremely mindful, and I think the industry is doing a good job in continuing to remind farmers of it, but you just can't have any contamination going into the grain handling system. So, I mean, this isn't rocket science. It's just about, cleaning your truck box and being just very careful when you're sweeping it out and whatnot. Like I say, the tolerances are zero. And I think just as a quick summary, we do all have to remember that seed treatments are a valuable input for farm customers. We want to ensure safety to both the environment and also the operator. We want to ensure the right product with the right rate is being applied, and it sounds a bit repetitive. And we want to adhere to all the requirements, regulations, licensing, etc., that is related to seed treating. So that's my perspective on this topic area. I guess a little bit of it overlapped with the previous presenter, but I think it's just to highlight some of the important areas.
Well, thanks so much, Peter. If you have questions for Peter, please type them into the chat box now. Peter, first question is, can you repeat why we're seeing such an interest in seed treating?
Well, I guess why I think we do anyways is my personal observation. One, I think the products are just working better. They're more efficacious products. I think we're doing a better job getting coverage on the seed versus, some of the old treating systems that we were using, where we relied on the seed being augered at least 2 or 3 times to get good coverage. We have people like Sara telling us how horrible our seed quality is. So she scares us all into thinking we should think about seed treatment for good reason. And I'm sure Sara will cite some of the recent results from last year's crop, where the seed quality was really bad, and seed treatments just go a long way to getting that quality up, so the grower can use that on their farm. And thirdly, the manufacturers of seed treatments are providing a lot of marketing push behind seed treatments, and just teasing out the value of seed treatments to farmers, and farmers are responding to that. And I guess last but not least, they work. So you can only promote stuff effectively that actually is going to have a positive net impact to the grower, and they do.
As of January 1st of this year, only accredited seed treatment operators certified through OSSA will be eligible to receive and apply designated seed treatment products. Can you explain what this means for retailers?
Well, you know what, I'm probably not the best person to ask that question to, but I mean, what it is trying to target is the fact that we need to have better storage conditions for the seed treatment that we're going to be handling. So, you know, on all the sites that we work on, we do have those facilities, so it hasn't impacted us too much. But where you don't have those facilities, that's a concern in terms of where you store the seed treatments you're going to apply. And I'm not sure if Russel can maybe expand on that a bit better, because I think he was a little more involved in that, perhaps.
Yeah, Mark, I can add a few components if you'd like.
Yep.
Sure. So within those accredited standards, ultimately what we were looking to do from an industry standpoint, and I would note that as part of the industry, when we were developing these standards, as Peter noted, we were trying to take into account the complexities and developing a national standard for environmental health and safety for commercial operations with all the examples that he had given. Really what we were looking to do as part of a multi-stakeholder initiative is basically be able to say, as industry, these facilities that are treating seed commercially go through a regime of best management practices or protocols as within the standards. And ultimately the goal would be is that there's a base level of environmental health and safety within the industry at the commercial level. So that's really what they are. In terms of the timelines, as noted, the standard came into force in 2017, and so there's a whole host of facilities that have passed these audits, as well as a number of facilities that are finalizing theirs in calendar year 2017. But moving forward, the aim will be that will be a national standard, in the same vein as ag retailers have come to work with for the chemical warehousing programs, the various anhydrous ammonia or ammonium nitrate programs that are out there as well.
I have another question that either of you may be able to answer. Do you know if there are any initiatives from industry to create a kind of quality certification or ISO for seed companies and retailers who are already treating seeds?
You know, I'm not aware of anything. I think the manufacturers are looking to CropLife and others to sort of organize some or doing the work that they're doing today. Is that fair, Russel?
Yeah, and that's quite accurate. I would say, just as a build on that, there are other global-based programs or ISO-based programs that within the Canadian marketplace are being examined, and I think that's some work that's primarily being led by the Canadian Seed Trade Association in terms of the seed quality and the dust off and everything that kind of encompasses that. So I suspect what we'll see in the future will be some level of programming in that space. Whether it's a full ISO certification, I think it's probably to be determined, but it's certainly something that the industry is currently looking at. There are a lot of international programs that are maybe a much more mature state than where we're at in Canada right now.
Great. Well, thanks so much, Peter. I'd like to switch over to our final speaker of the day, Sara Foster, to talk about how retailers can help customers interpret seed test results and how this ties into good seed treatment stewardship. Sara is founder and president of 2020 Seed Labs. She started the business in 1989, providing testing services for all crop kinds. Involved in the seed industry since the late 1970s, Sara studied and qualified as an accredited seed analyst at the National Institute of Agricultural Botany in Cambridge, England. I'll turn it over to you, Sara.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you, Peter, for the nice lead-in. I guess I don't really want to scare people into using seed treatment. I'd like to think that my role is a little more on how we can encourage people to use seed treatments effectively and use them as part of their crop inputs. So today I'm going to bring how we work in the lab with accredited tests and how we can encourage people, primarily farmers, seed users, ag retailers, and seed care specialists on some of the things that we see on a regular basis. This year, absolutely, we have had issues with poor quality seed. Certainly, harvest 2016 was a challenge. I'm actually going to talk a little bit about the unharvested acres that are also out there and how they can also impact seed quality for next year, and how I think using seed treatment is going to be very, very important. So I'd like to start. So these next few slides represent what we see in the laboratory, both in the germination department and in the pathology department. And these tests represent what we report on our report of seed analysis. So hopefully when I'm finished, people like the ag retailers who are using the report of seed analysis can see the story and the history and the results and the data behind that report of analysis. It's often difficult to interpret numbers, but I think anyone watching this today who is selling seed, recommending seed treatments, can put some meat behind those numbers and use them effectively. So this is very typical of a germination sample that we've had this season. It's not unusual for us to see 7.5% Fusarium graminearum. And essentially this plate that you see here is an agar plate, and this is the fungal screen that goes along with the accredited germination. So I just want to say that in Canada, all germination that's conducted in an accredited laboratory is recognized by standards that are put out by the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, and the fungal screen is just for information only. But if done properly and done with people who have the background and the credentials to do it, it's very, very good information. So this is a sample that's untreated, and you'll note that, as I said, the plate test goes alongside it, and it shows and brings out the pathogens that are causing problems for the germination. Now, in a situation like this is the same sample that's been treated. And so when we have a situation where we're noticing a high load of pathogen activity, the seed analysts who are doing the germination don't necessarily always know what those pathogens are, and that's where it's really beneficial to have a pathologist on staff or a disease diagnostician on staff that can help us look at what these pathogens actually are and actually how troublesome or how difficult they are to control. So there are a number of different seed treatment companies offering various different seed treatments that we can use and promote, and they're all very, very effective, and technology has come a very long way. They're a lot easier for people to use, and they're a lot safer. And the actives are designed to work with a lot of the pathogens that we're seeing today. I don't think it comes as any surprise to anybody that the environment today is changing very rapidly, And there are years when we see diseases that essentially just go off the radar in terms of high numbers. And Fusarium this year in Alberta, for example, has done exactly that. So every year we're faced with challenges in terms of making recommendations, and certainly making recommendations that are true to good stewardship. So naturally, you know, if we've got seed samples that aren't making grade, and grade being a minimum of 85% germination, and having high pathogens, particularly things like the pathogenic fungi, which are the most problematic because they cause seed-borne diseases, and they're usually obviously of most economic importance, we're not going to make a recommendation for anybody to spend the money on seed treatment. But as you can see, just to remind you, going back, just about every single one of those seeds on that plate has some form of an infection. And these black colonies are actually Alternaria, which is one of the most common fungi in the saprophytic or weak pathogen category. And there's one colony of red that you see, and this is more than likely the Fusarium graminearum, which is representing the 7.5% total infection. So again, this is the sample that's been treated, and you can see very, very good control. So in a situation like this, we know that we can improve the germination from 85% by controlling the pathogens, and in actual fact, the vigor too will be better as well, because the seed isn't working any harder than it should, because the seed treatment is working with it. It's important that the seed treatment be applied properly, and that we always do follow manufacturers' guidelines for the proper coverage. The next slide, you can see how this is 14% Fusarium graminearum, and in this case, because we've now got double the amount, in the right conditions, and of course in a germination in the right conditions, you can see that the infection has spread fairly readily. And this is because when we do a germination of untreated seed, the conditions for germination are optimum, and optimum being 20 degrees and having the right amount of water, and obviously all the things that the diseases like, or the pathogens like. So again, this is very typical of what we've seen this year. And again, we would go and if this this is a real sample, and when this sample comes in, we make the phone call. We think we can work with this. We'd like to make some recommendations on seed treatments, and would you like to go ahead with it? And we will treat the sample here in-house, again, you know, following manufacturers' guidelines. So here, with this particular sample, you can see that the pathogens are a lot more aggressive. So the two red colonies are representing the Fusarium graminearum, and then there's a colony, and I'm just going to see if I can make this work. Not sure if I can do that, but I'm trying to draw a circle around one of these pathogens, and I can see I can't make my tools work. Mark, I told you I'd have a problem with it. Oh, thank you.
You got it? There we go.
Yeah, thank you. So, thank you for drawing that, because that shows exactly what I'm looking for. And on the plate, you'll see two very large colonies there of red, which represent the Fusarium graminearum. And then over to the right, there's a smaller colony and less red, and that is the minor Fusarium species that we're seeing too. So they would be anything other than graminearum, so Poe, Cormorum, that type of thing. And then the black colonies, again, that's alternaria. So this shows that there's more aggressive pathogen activity here, and it's worth having a look to see if the seed treatment will make a difference, particularly as the germination and vigor numbers are there. And seed being short, this would be the year that we would encourage people to use seed with a seed treatment. And of course, there's a breaking point where absolutely seed treatment isn't going to be effective, and I'll talk a little bit about that when we get to the actual report. But it shows you here, this is interesting, on the germination, any of the seedlings that haven't actually sprouted are definitely seeds that have systemic Fusarium graminearum, because in the presence of anything that's systemic, it's an internal infection which is going to kill the seedling itself. So, there'll be no viable structures. So this tells us that, the Fusarium graminearum in that area where this sample has been grown has been fairly high and probably been in the area for a number of years. And still means, though, that we have to manage it, and that there are good seed treatments that will assist in managing it. So the next one, a little bit higher at 17.5, and again, both fusariums are on this, and that being the graminearum and the other minor fusariums, and again the black colonies representing the alternaria. And typically you'll see more alternaria than anything else, because it is one of these junky type fungi that are very prevalent in years when we've had poor harvest conditions. And there will be a lot of that around this year, particularly in Alberta, because we have so many unharvested canola acres, and canola, unfortunately, is more prone to alternaria than anything. When we talk about saprophytic or weak pathogens, they are pathogens that typically live on decaying debris, and will be more prevalent, as I say, this year, not just really with canola, but with also cereals that we haven't managed to bring in. So important to think that any seed that's going in the ground in the neighborhood should be treated, and not only is it protecting the seed, but it's also protecting you from that inoculum that's around, and also from soil-borne pathogens that are always present in the soil. So when we get to 17.5% Fusarium graminearum, and actually 14%, although it's very typical of seed that's coming out of other provinces, and typically southern Alberta at the moment with the conditions that we've had, we don't normally recommend that you try to use the seed, because it's not supporting good seed treatment stewardship, and it's not going to be sustainable in the long run either. So please don't think that, we hope that, seed treatments are going to be the silver bullet. We realize that they go a long way to protecting and preserving seed viability and seed growth, but they can't work miracles on seed that's got high infection. So you can see a lot of infection on this blotter, and it's supported on the plate. But just to show, when it's treated, the seed treatment on the germination gives back the uniformity of the seedlings. We've got good emergence, and it's gone a long way to increasing the germination. So when you're looking at a report of analysis, very important, if you buy the package that has the fungal screen on it, that you're looking at the numbers, and you're looking at what the germination is capable of as well. So it's important to look at how many abnormals there are and how many deads there are. And here's a situation where there were pathogens present, but they had killed the seed. So looking at this, if you hadn't read the report of analysis and you had accidentally phoned in and said, I want to, try and preserve this, and that has been happening, sorry, we can't bring dead seed back to life. And any seed treatment's not going to obviously do any good, but it will protect the seed that's there and that is viable. And it certainly protects it from secondary pathogen infection or secondary infection. But this is just an example where you need to be thinking about what the report of analysis is actually saying. And if it's dead, it's not worth pursuing, because anything that has high numbers of dead seed, and that being over 30%, for example, is going to be weaker to begin with, and there's a reason why there's been a decline in the germination. So this is a report of analysis. This is recognized by the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, and every report will have a date for the germination. So when the germination was conducted, and this was April the 12th, 2017, and a lab number that's unique to the report. And this was put together specifically for this webinar. So it's not a real sample, obviously, but it is a good example of the type of quality that we want to see and what we're typically promoting. Germination is fundamental in terms of finding out what's actually going on with the seed, but there are a number of tests that you must use to get the entire picture on the seed quality. So the first thing, I was just saying to Trevor Blois, our disease diagnostician today, I would recommend in any year where we've had issues with seed quality, a fungal screen be the first thing that you do, rather than just the germination. And everybody goes for the germination because it is the accredited test, but really, if the seed has lots of issues, the germination is going to be weak anyway. But in a textbook situation, this is what we're looking at here. We've got 1,000 kernel weight, which is used for your seeding rate. So you can use that number with your germination. And the germination here is 96. There's 2 abnormals and two dead. So this is very much a textbook sample in that it really doesn't have an awful lot wrong with it. And the vigor is 91, and perfect vigor, because we need to see that number being as very close to the germination as possible. Now, the fusarium was conducted in a couple of different ways. We did the DNA. So this is representing, this particular ROSA, or report of seed analysis, represents a seed testing package that gives you every angle on seed quality. So it goes far beyond germination and vigor. So the DNA was used for the Fusarium graminearum method, and you'll notice that we did detect some, but in the fungal screen we didn't. So this means that this has surface infection Fusarium graminearum. It's one of the possibilities, and I'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. But not to be, when you see something like this, don't be confused, because it does mean that we have found Fusarium graminearum, but it can be used in areas where Fusarium is already prevalent. And people in Saskatchewan and Manitoba work with this every day. They manage Fusarium graminearum effectively all the time with seed treatments and planting dates and soil temperatures. The fungal screen here has all of the fungi that we would consider of economical importance. And essentially, we found common root rot, which we find very frequently. We've got xero Fusarium graminearum, and then we've got several other minor Fusarium species at 13.5%, and then we have the Pyronophora at 0.5 and Septoria at 3. Now, there's 3 categories for the types of fungal, or the types of pathogens or diseases that we're looking for, and that's the pathogenic, which is the ones that are most troublesome, then the saprophytic, and then the storage mold. So all of these fungi represent that fungal screen, and the fungal screen should be used to identify potentially devastating seed-borne pathogens. And if everybody used this as a diagnostic tool, I feel that we can use this data to inform our clients about the use of seed treatments more effectively and monitor the areas where the pathogens are more prevalent. So in other words, creating risk assessment maps, which in the future can be very, very important and powerful tools for anyone who's looking at using seed treatments. So a lot of value with this particular test, and it's not an expensive test either. So it's something that I think everyone in any year should think about using, because it's an educational piece, and it allows you to be able to look at rotation, look at maybe switching out and buying new seed, and potentially using seed treatment if the numbers are where they should be. And then the last part is the remarks that you would see on a germination and fungal screen report, where we talk about some of the accredited things that we need to add in. So here we've extended the pre-chill to break the dormancy by 3 days. That's a normal statement, but it's good value because it allows the client to see if there was dormancy present. And then talking about the positive Fusarium DNA, as I mentioned, it means that it has been exposed, and a follow-up plate test should be used to conduct, should be conducted to find out if there's any disease present. And this is critical because if the DNA goes negative, then everything is clear. But if the DNA goes positive and the plate goes negative, it always means there's been a late seed infection. And especially this year, we've had a long, drawn-out, very, very tedious harvest, lots of inoculum around, and spores have landed on seed that's already finished flowering or on the debris, and we're picking up the spores on the DNA. And when we do that, it's really important to know that, because it's an early warning that allows us to know that Fusarium's in the area. It's not necessarily affecting the quality of the seed, but it has the potential now to start building inoculum. And this is a number one reason why we should be looking at seed treatment. So there's a number of alternatives. We've given 3 alternatives as to why we find the fungus present on the seed surface, and it's not going positive on the plate. Part of it is that, there may be non-viable spores, and also that when we do the plate test, it's important for people to remember that there's a bleaching process that allows us to clean the seed before we actually plate it. And if the seed is only infected on the surface, then we're going to wash that off. And we have data to support that 50% of the time the plate test is going negative and the DNA is going positive. So we know that we've got more fusarium in the area than we're giving credit to. So that, in a nutshell, is the report of analysis. And important to remember to take it at least 2 steps beyond the germination and always look at the fungal screen as being one of the most important tests that you can have. So if there's any questions, I'm happy to take them, Mark.
Yes, we have a couple minutes left to take some quick questions. I have a couple already. If you have any questions, feel free to type them into the chat box on the bottom left-hand side of your screen. Sara, can you just recap in a nutshell why it's good for retailers specifically to be able to interpret seed test results?
Well, the report of analysis is like reading a book. Once you understand what the tests mean, it gives you 2 opportunities. It allows the retailer to work with their clients if new seed needs to be sourced, and they understand what the pathogen levels mean and the germination levels mean. They can assist in helping the client buy new seeds, source varieties that work for their areas. And if the seed is good and the pathogens are within an acceptable level that we know that seed treatment is going to be effective, then obviously recommend seed treatment. So I think we're learning that a lot of people don't understand the report of seed analysis. We're also learning that a lot of times the report of seed analysis is overlooked. And I think next year, as we've already mentioned, I would like to revisit this and actually spend some time looking in depth at the report of seed analysis, and if it's worthwhile putting on an entire seminar just on what seed labs do in terms of bringing value and helping people with their input decisions. I think it's very, very worthwhile.
And what's the one thing that retailers can tell their customers to get across the reason why seed testing ties into good seed treatment stewardship?
Well, I think you wouldn't want to entertain the idea of treating your seed unless you have seed that's worth treating. So I think retailers need to encourage people to get their seed in for testing. And I'm a big advocate for promoting certified seed. I'm also promoting the idea that people who don't normally get their seed tested, and that's the people who are using bin run, that they should be also testing, because I think a lot of times, they need to understand how important not just their germination is, but, are they or have they been exposed to diseases. And undoubtedly this year, I think all across the prairies we're going to see higher levels. We've just had that type of environment. So important, if we're going to do our part in terms of recognizing seed treatment stewardship, we're not going to recommend that seed that's not worthwhile testing or worthwhile treating is treated.
Well,
and I
think
think
you very much. Sorry, go ahead, Sara.
One quick thing. I just wanted to go back and say that definitely technology has advanced, undoubtedly. And the seed treatments that we're using are highly targeted, and they have the ingredients that are very, very effective on all of the pathogens that we see. And I know that from our point of view, we've gone a long way over the last few years to encourage this industry to be more vibrant. We believe that the show and tell behind seeing how seed treatments do work, there's a picture is worth 1,000 words. And I think if we can do more to encourage people to use seed treatments, we'll go a long way to preventing some of the issues that we have had.
Well, thanks so much, Sara, for the information. That's actually all we have time for today, so I'd just like to thank our three speakers for making time in their busy schedule to share their insights and expertise today. I hope that everyone has found this information valuable. Again, I'd just like to pass on a quick thank you to our sponsors, 2020 Seed Labs, CCAN, and Canterra Seeds for their support. I also want to quickly thank Kyle Dradawani and Teresa Kurdziewicz, our team working behind the scenes, for their dedication to making this a successful and informative event. The presentation will be available online at germination.ca by the end of the week. Thanks so much for your attention today, and on behalf of the team here at Germination, we hope you have a great rest of your day.